Hi, my quarantine is about to end in just a few days. I've been holed up here for weeks for the most part. I've been watching a lot of movies. So I wanted to talk about a few that are Criterion Collection movies. I've made it a point to watch a few of those in the last few days so I could gather together enough possibilities for ones to talk about. So, anyway, uh, some ones that I made my way through that made the biggest impression on me. Um, I'll go ahead and jump in here. This one is Teorema by Pierpaolo Pasolini, starring Silvana Mangano and Terence Stamp. Um, this movie is probably the closest, I guess, Pasolini came to kind of putting his finger on the pulse of the Zeitgeist in the 1960s. Um, he uses this. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the film as I'm talking. So if I look away a bit, it's because of the wonderful shots in Teorema. Um, I like to put them on in the background while I'm talking about them, kind of get in the mood, so to speak. Um, but anyway, Teorema, what's it about? Terence Stamp is this kind of mysterious, unnamed, handsome visitor to this bourgeoisie family in Italy, and he comes into their lives very mysteriously and touches them all one by one, literally touches them all one by one. He seduces the entire family from the maid to the son to the daughter to the mother to the father, and they're all forever changed. Uh, it isn't until after he just as mysteriously ups and leaves that you start to see the effects, the radical effects that's had on this family. We don't really see the family how they were before that much, but you do get the idea as kind of a placid, complacent, upper middle class environment. There was a strike, I think, at the father is an industrialist. There was a strike at his plants, and he has recently improved the conditions, the working conditions and such at the plants. I think he gave everyone a raise or, you know, different kinds of working conditions. And, the beginning is kind of this faux um, television interview with a reporter about, with the workers about how they feel about this and what's it going to change their views on such things. And then we just kind of get into the family. Um, it's kind of wild because Terrence Stamp he's kind of this was kind of, I guess, the height of his fame as being kind of a handsome, kind of leading man, kind of charismatic young British cat. And um, he would seem normally out of place in a Pasolini movie, maybe, but I think it's Pasolini's films from right in this period when he began casting non-Italian actors in addition to the regular Italian actors and non-professional Italian actors. It's interesting because in Porcile or Pigsty, he employs Anne Wiazemski and Jean-Pierre Léaud, both of whom had connections to Jean-Luc Godard. Um, Anne Wiazemski reappears in this film. Um, the Terence Stamp appears, and then of course the mother is played by Silvana Mangano, who is, the glamorous Italian icon. A little side note here. I'm not going to review it, at least not anytime soon. But there is a omnibus film called The Witches, La Strega, from the same period, which has four different directors um, telling different kinds of stories about these kind of striking women, all played by Silvana in different roles. And one of the one of the pieces is called "From the Earth to the Moon," and she Yeah, she's in that one with some comedians. Toto, I think his name is Toto, and then Nanetto Davoli, who's in a number of Pasolini's films, including this one. Um, Nanetto Davoli in this film is he kind of swoops into um, the mansion, the courtyard, and he's kind of doing like this. He's like the herald angel, and he's announcing uh, his presence uh, to the maid, played by Laura Betti, another Italian mainstay. Um, and rock music is playing in the background, and so it's kind of capturing the moment. Like, hold on, I'm coming to this uber capitalist environment, and I'm heralding in change. It's whooshing in, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, and it's going to take control of your life and turn you upside down. I'm not sure if that was the interpretation that Pasolini wanted. I just kind of thought of it just now, to be honest. I have written about this movie once before, briefly, when I wrote for Video Eyeball magazine. I did a small piece on how Pasolini had been snubbed by the Oscars, because it was hard enough. Each movie as they came out of his, seems like the films got arrested and banned by the Vatican. But there was this kind of period where I think I called it. Well, I took a riff on a great book called, oh gosh, Pasolini. I want to say it's called Cinema is Heresy, but that might not be the title. But I don't own it anymore. But it kind of lists these three films as like his loose Mannerist trilogy. It's Porcile, Teorema, and Salo. And of course, there's a jump, from the first two to Salo. He does the trilogy of life in between, which are all based on, you know, um, popular folk tales and such, like the Canterbury Tales, the Arabian Nights, um, and they're all pretty sexually explicit. Canterbury Tales played here, rated X, when I was a little kid when it first came out. I think I was an infant. I don't know. It could have been a re-release, but I don't know if it was first run or not. Am I that old? Um, but I always remember the picture of the person in the giant hat and the little X at the bottom and the Canterbury Tales. Of course, it was many years before I knew that was Pasolini or even who Pasolini was. Um, but anyway, the three that I wrote about for Video Eyeball, I kind of just talked about how they had kind of a similar schema. They kind of each contrast, like the desert and kind of a wilderness area where he films, that's kind of like, you know, nature gone wild or man gone wild, back to nature. Contrast that with very austere. He always has these very austere inside shots of these cold, sterile buildings in an industrial world. Salo doesn't really do that contrast all that much. It's pretty much all in the cold, austere chateau where the children are violated. Um, but in Teorema and in Porcile, he does do the contrast. In Porcile, he does two stories. So he has the story of the industrialist, yet another industrialist, who is actually a escaped Nazi war criminal, um, and his dysfunctional immediate family. And that's the one with the Godardian segments. And then he has another story with Pierre Clemente as this kind of lost warrior guy out in the desert who reversed the cannibalism. Um, Teorema is an interesting kind of intersection of all these things, um, because by the end of the film, our industrialist character, through his very understated, almost blink if you miss it, you blink and you can miss it, sexual encounter with Terence Stamp, he throws away, the fetters of this bourgeoisie life and runs wildly into the desert. He's kind of reverted to savagery, but he's wild, but he seems happier. They all seem happier in a way since he came, but they suffer some sorrow when he leaves. The son is a frustrated artist who isn't sure about his sexuality, and then when Stamp leaves, after having their encounter, sleeping in the same bedroom together and then partially in the same bed together. Um, the son goes through this whole kind of transformative period with his painting and kind of berates himself for not being any good and for trying to express things he can't express. It's familiar to any kind of visual artist who does that kind of work, and um, he's not the same person who can like joke around with his buddies and kind of barely concealing this kind of homoerotic subcurrent anymore. He's got to come face to face with who he is as a man and as an artist. His sister, played by Anne Wiazemski, a beautiful redhead who was married to Godard, by the way, for a while. She, goes through her own little trauma, insecurity, and she ends up becoming kind of catatonic as a result of the angelic one departing after seducing her. The mother, uh, she has her own kind of quandaries. She's kind of wanting to be loose from this bourgeois lifestyle and go out and be sexually free and etc. So we kind of chart some of her journey. And to me, the most interesting though is the maid, Laura Betty, who he arrives at first and the last one to see him off, and he makes love with her. It's the scene that's the most overtly sexual of these scenes. Well, maybe Sylvana's this close, but he's real subtle here. I mean, it's like it's obvious what is happening, but he's keeping it to a minimum. There's not a lot of dialogue in this film. There's long stretches of silence, and he kind of lets your mind fill in the what's happened and the meaning behind it. In Laura Betty's case, she's literally blessed by this angel demon stamp creature, and she becomes like this holy woman and this ascetic, and ends up levitating above the town with these newfound angelic divine or infernal powers. So he ventures a little into the magical realism and the fantasy, which From the Earth to the Moon is similar to that in a way, and he touches on that style in a few other of his works. Um, there's nobody like Pasolini. I mean, his stuff looks like no one else. He uses tons of handheld uh, camera, and just the angles and the way he captures both the interiors and the exteriors are I don't know, they don't look like anyone else. On the top of my head, I can't remember who his regular cinematographer was who was responsible for a lot of that look. So I'm going to have to just omit that fact. But in any case, they arrive at something uh, really amazing in his films. TEOREMA is one of his more slicker films, and I guess relatively speaking, more mainstream. And I'm using these terms very loosely, but compared to the rest of his oeuvre, and uh, so it was kind of a natural that after doing Salo and the Trilogy of Life box set on Blu-ray, and having done Mama Roma on DVD, Criterion would finally take up TEOREMA. I've been waiting for years for that to be re-released in a good print. I'd had it on VHS, the lousy print. I had a DVD, the lousy print for Water Bearer. Good company, good, well-intentioned, worked with the Pier Pasolini Foundation, but they never had good source prints that they were mastering from. This TEOREMA is flawless. It's magnificent, and the colors are very, very intense. And then, of course, there are parts where they're very monochromatic, and this beautiful kind of golden luster is over the shots. So, I recommend this film. If you like Pasolini, I'm not sure if you guys are into Pasolini or have seen any. I'm sure everyone knows Salo or knows about Salo, and I covered it on Halloween. Didn't I? I think I did. Maybe I didn't. I can't remember if I did. I remember I put it on my list of 90 most important horror films in my life, which is right around the same time I made these lists on Facebook. So there was a lot of overlap between those movies. So I may be getting confused, and possibly I did not talk about Salo at all on the show. But like I said, I've written it up before. I've discussed it before over the years in different venues, and it always comes up when you get like most disturbing films ever list and such. And I would say it qualifies as definitely being up there in the top five. Um, it and Cannibal Holocaust seem to be the ones that have had the staying power to still shock and repulse and provoke after 35, 40, 45 years on. um, but anyway, Teorema is, like I said, with the music and the kind of 60s vibe that's kind of going on. It's kind of like this free love kind of thing, and just freedom in general from all these restraints of the bourgeois order. um, that in that sense, it's more relatable, I guess, to a lot of people who are into films and foreign films, especially, or underground or psychedelic cinema from that period. I think they could hook with Teorema probably easier than any of his other films. Um, but it's definitely, so when I say it's more mainstream and slicker, I just mean that in a relative sense. I don't mean it's, Pasolini has, suddenly turned into Spielberg. Um, though, Pasolini kind of left us right when Spielberg was ascendant. So, maybe he saw the coming of a different paradigm in world cinema. Um, this one has a few extras, and I haven't really investigated them. It's very, very few extras, mainly an audio commentary by a British critic. I've listened to about half of that. It's pretty good. I wish it had a little more extras. It does have an interview with Terrence Stamp, and that's quite good. Um, so moving on, there's one that I rewatched tonight, and I had only watched it one time since I'd purchased it. I got it at one of the Criterion half off sales through Barnes and Noble that they do twice a year. It's Ace in the Hole by Billy Wilder with Kirk Douglas, and this was the edition that first came out in 2007. This is when everybody was kind of tentatively embracing Blu-ray, but not wholly. So you still had HDTV or whatever, high def video, whatever that was called, which flopped. Um, and then you had a lot of companies, including Criterion, who would put out the set with the Blu-ray with everything on it, and then accompanying it would be like two DVDs, one with the movie and one with the extras. But you can fit all that on one Blu-ray. So I have two of these curious animals. This is one. This is the inside of Ace in the Hole. There's the tent or the big carnival. Um, but here you see you've got two DVDs, the film and the extras, and then here you got all in one nice Blu-ray. But they packaged all this together initially as kind of like transitioning, I guess, to finally putting out movies just with the Blu-ray in there and no DVDs. The Nashville edition I have is like this also. Those are both out. I think all of those are out of print. So, but I'm holding on to mine. Don't worry. Ace in the Hole. There's also kind of a faux newspaper, which is the essays on the film, and it is about a newspaper man who's kind of a corrupt scoundrel played by Kirk, and he basically has been kicked off all these major newspapers all across the country. He's unethical. He'll do anything for the story, for the attention. So this is another one of those early kind of media manipulation, kind of prophetic films like A Face in the Crowd or Network, or you could put a lot of movies in that lineage, even like Videodrome and Cannibal Holocaust, all the way down to Jake Gyllenhaal with Nightcrawler. This one might be the first where you get the guy who's going to do anything for the story or anything for the shot. You can easily see this lineage going through Cannibal Holocaust, for instance. But it's that frenzy, it's that fame and money and anything for a buck kind of mentality. There's a nice afterword to this movie by Spike Lee that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite extras, where he kind of discusses that, and he says, everything's going to be done for a buck in America. If a buck can be made off something, somebody's going to try to make it. If it can be someone's death, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of what happens in this movie. A guy gets caught in a cave-in. in some caves with some Indian artifacts he's trying to research, and he can't get out. And Kirk playing Charles Tatum, this reporter, who's down on his luck. He just started working for this Albuquerque Sun Bulletin, so he's kind of back in the small leagues, but he needs a job. He needs to begin again somewhere. But he's been there a year, and he's spinning his wheels, and he wants that big, huge break. He wants that rush of power and fame and glory, and he wants to get back to New York where he can kind of live a more cosmopolitan life that he's accustomed to. So he sees this story. They just had him and his photographer, Herbie. They happen upon this story just by accident on the way to a rattlesnake hunt, and yeah, and he immediately goes, recklessly goes into the cave and talks to the guy who's trapped. It's a cat named Leo Minosa, and I don't recall the actor's name for that character. But this guy is a good-natured fellow. He's just kind of like an average guy. I mean, but he was really fascinated by the Indian legends, and he's superstitious. He thinks that he was poking around where he shouldn't have been, and the Indian spirits were roused, and they crashed the cave down on the guy. So doesn't have any broken bones. He's just kind of some, cross beams kind of thing that have his legs pinned, but there's no huge rock on top of him, but there's some huge rocks that could slip and just crush the guy to death at any moment. So our man Charlie Kirk, he starts promising this guy, I'm going to get you out. I'm your buddy, I'm your friend. Let me take your picture, because he thinks this guy has a big story, a big human interest story, and he alludes to an earlier cave-in that had a lot of national interest in 1925. And I don't know if that was a real life incident or if it was fictionalized, made up for the movie reality, or if it was something that happened in reality. Maybe someone can tell me in the comments, or maybe not. So he tries to do just that. He kind of takes control of the rescue effort to get this guy out, and he kind of drags out his time in the cave so he can get more and more gripping coverage. And Leo's wife, I think Jan Sterling plays her character, Lorraine. She's sick of her husband. She's sick of being out in the middle of New Mexico and just having this kind of just little tourist shop that's related to the Indian relic thing, and not making much money, not really doing anything, getting much attention. Leo loves his wife. He's obsessed with her, but she's really wanting to get away, and she sees this as a way to get away. She's going to exploit what's happened to him. I mean, she kind of gets the idea from Charlie, but essentially, the tourists and the curious onlookers that are going to flood into that area to keep track firsthand of this gripping story drama of Leo and his protracted rescue attempt. They're going to increase the financial viability of her little store, and she daydreams about getting on a bus and going to some other city. She tries to leave at first and do that, and just abandon Leo. Not that he knows about it, but Charlie talks her into staying. Kind of. He inspires her, I think, with his own Machiavellian kind of way of handling this manipulative way of controlling the situation for his own benefits. I think that inspires her to do the same. So they're kind of like two peas in a pod, and there's constantly a friction between them, and she does stay, and the shop does take off, and tons of people flock in, and even the carnival comes and puts a merry-go-round. This is after like 4 or 5 days this has been going on. And then we realized that, Kirk had protracted this rescue effort by directing the contractor to drill from the top of the mountain down into it, which was going to take longer. so that way he could protract this story and get more juice out of it. When the guy could have gone in there and shored up the walls and kept the rocks from falling and then pulled the guy out. Um, they did it the long, hard way, and the sheriff is like this corrupt asshole, and he's complicit in this whole thing. And Charlie sweet talks him, and they're kind of all kind of conspiring here to take advantage of this in their own ways. The sheriff's wanting re-election. He's kind of a weasel. He has a pet rattlesnake that he took from the rattlesnake hunt that he keeps feeding different kinds of food. Just some little side, little bits here and there in the movie. But Charlie realizes that they're not going to get this guy out in time, that he's going to die pretty soon. Just the whole condition of his breathing and he's going to get pneumonia and he can't get out. He can't get full medical treatment. So Charlie is kind of, I don't want to say he has a change of heart, but he has this kind of outrage and about it, and he realizes a lot of it's directed at himself. That he's the one who sentenced this guy to die, basically, for the story, or risked him dying to get the story. And he berates the wife, and they have a very dramatic kind of showdown. She's very attracted to him, and he's just completely brushed her off and used her as part of this con. And they get in a very physical altercation, and Charlie gets wounded, and you don't really think anything of it at the time. Well, I did at the time, and then I noticed I didn't really see him bleeding or anything, so I thought he was okay. But toward the end of the movie, when he makes the last-ditch effort to save Leo, and it doesn't work, or at least to make it right, or just to do something different than what he's been doing, it doesn't work, and he has to tell everyone that the circus is over, take down the carnival, and it's all caught up to him, his own corruption and his own complicity in this, and now he's paying the price, and that he is slowly dying. And he's kind of like all over the map here about what he's going to do. I mean, he doesn't really have a plan. He's just kind of following these different impulses. He's drinking a lot, and I guess a lot of times when you drink or you're depressed, you're torn by all these different emotions and just capricious thoughts, and that's what he does. I mean, where he finally wants Herbie to take him back to the Albuquerque, which serves no purpose to his survival from his wound or anything else. I mean, everyone hates him by now, but it's like he wants to make his last stand there. He wants to make a statement. He wants to kind of let the world, or everyone who he stepped on to get back to this point, he wants them all to know that, he's fallen and that he realizes what he's done. And it's not so much that he's saying, I'm sorry, that might not be in his nature, but he is basically saying, well, look, I'm getting punished, so you can get your satisfaction out of this. And so karma comes home to roost. The final shot is excellent, as Spike Lee points out in his interview. There's some other interviews, and there's a feature on Billy Wilder in here. And of course, Billy Wilder was a really famous mainstream Hollywood director, another German expatriate like Fritz Lang. But Billy Wilder won tons of awards for writing and directing, and especially for like The Apartment and Some Like It Hot, and some of those are his really big mainstream films. And then he also did like Witness for the Prosecution, Stalag 17. I mean, he just it's kind of a roll call of mainstream Hollywood films from like the 40s to the 70s. And recently I got back into Double Indemnity, which is only his third or fourth film he directed, and that was his classic noir. That's another one I've watched recently. I've debated about covering. That's not a Criterion, but it's a very nice Blu-ray regardless. And I was really impressed with that. And of course, I've always loved Sunset Boulevard. I even got to see it on the big screen, a digitized copy, but albeit not from film, but still on the big screen at the library downtown. a local critic that I know, Sam Shapiro, screened it, and my friend Tim McLean and I went. This is a couple of years ago. I was already a fan of the movie, and that was great. So that was like my favorite one by him, and it still is. Um, so yeah, with those movies fresh in mind, I decided, well, I've got this. I only watched it once, and I'm trying to cover some Criterions. So let me give it another spin, and I did, and that's why I'm talking about it. I liked it a lot better the second time around. It made a bigger impression on me. Um, I don't know if I just wasn't in the right frame of mind the first time I saw it. I was expecting something different after reading about it in these articles about how prescient it was supposed to be. But it is, and it is pretty dark for a Hollywood movie of that time. I mean, so was Sunset Boulevard. But Sunset Boulevard was very popular critically and financially, and it enabled Billy Wilder to stage this film and this production and create this whole, escalating carnivalesque atmosphere that revolves around this guy, being dug out of a hole basically, um, and everyone's around celebrating and having fun, and while they wait to see him come out of the hole, it's pretty cynical. So but I did like the fact that by the end, our protagonist, who was really a villain for all intents and purposes, our protagonist, he he realizes how callous it is. He's actually aware of the ramifications of his actions. So I guess that's the kind of moral kind of ending that you would expect Hollywood would tack on, but I don't think it's really a victory or anything. He's not redeemed. He's not going to live on and have other adventures. He's paying the price for his callousness. Beautiful print, black and white, 1951. You should definitely check it out. There's several others that I've watched recently, but I don't think I'm going to go down that particular road yet. But I will say that one of them is Fritz Lang's M. I revisited that and extras on its Blu-ray, and they're incredible. I was like in love with that film all over again. I found a lot of people I know in a film group I own on Facebook are fans of it, so that was good to know. I guess that's Fritz Lang's second most popular or well-known film after Metropolis. Uh, but unless you count like Scarlet Street and some of his more mainstream noirs. Uh, but yeah, I've rattled on for a while, so I wanted to get in a few videos, and this is a chance just to talk about these while they're fresh in my mind. So I will be doing some more videos soon. You can subscribe. Somewhere I'll have the little button on there. Maybe not right away, but I'll end up fixing it, where you can subscribe and click on that, and then the two little screens, which will be the video before this in this series and the video after this in this series. Or if not the video after this, it'll be the playlist itself. You can go right to it. So I'm on this is episode 37. So, and since a couple were two-parters, I think this is going to be my 39th or 40th Blue Review video. So that's in 3 months. So I can't stop recording. I'm a madman, obsessed. So thanks for joining me, and I appreciate the support. Take care.